In this edition of The Great Game, dear viewer, I'm going to talk to you about the story of Kashmir. Now, if you read the Tribune newspaper, every Saturday morning I have a column, and this week's Great Game is on Kashmir, and it's headlined The Inverted Question of Kashmir, and the strap is a line that comes beneath the headline, which says, "Ask not what your country can do for Kashmir, but what Kashmir can do for the country." Now, therein lies a tale. And of course, you've heard of this line before, this phrase before. It's the famous phrase from John F. Kennedy when he talks about ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And so I've twisted that to talk about India and Kashmir. But hold on to that thought for a minute. And I'd also like to urge you, dear viewer, to follow us, follow the Tribune on all our social media handles across X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and everywhere else. And also, since we're talking about Kashmir, I'd urge you to follow the work of our reporters, Adil Akhzar in Srinagar and Arjun Sharma in Jammu, some of the best and brightest reporters reporting the story from Kashmir. Now, back to my column, The Great Game, headlined The Inverted Question in Kashmir. And the reason I say this is because in the Delhi High Court last week, Yasin Malik, the separatist Kashmiri leader, filed an affidavit in the Delhi High Court. Now, you know that he's been in Tihar jail since 2022, two charges to which he has pled guilty of money laundering. He has been accused of money laundering, a case that goes back to 2002. And this charge, he's been given life imprisonment. And now, as his case comes up before the court, this large affidavit, which goes into many, many pages, and it's worthwhile reading that, dear viewer. In fact, my colleague at the Tribune in the Delhi Bureau, Shekhar Singh, he has several stories on it, and I would urge you to read his stories, which basically talk about him and his life over the last 35 years, since 1989, when back in the day, then Home Minister Mufti Mahmood Saeed's daughter Rubaiya was kidnapped. Subsequently, the following year, Yasin Malik and his group, the JKLF, also killed in cold blood 4 Indian Air Force officers in Srinagar, and the story continues year after year, decade after decade, across prime ministers. Begins with Chandra Shekhar, then P.V. Narasimha Rao, following that Deve Gowda, I.K. Gujral, Atal Behari Vajpayee, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and even Prime Minister Modi in his first term in office from 2014 to 2019. And in many ways, the story of Yasin Malik, at least in this affidavit, is also in some ways the story of Kashmir. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Yasin Malik talks about how he was fated by every prime minister in the last 35 years or so, from Chandra Shekhar to PM Modi in his first term. And he talks about how each of these prime ministers tried to woo him and his separatist group and urge them to turn over a new leaf. That was the first. The second is that at the time, both Prime Minister Atal Behari Vajpayee, and if I take you back a little bit into history, you remember that PM Vajpayee undertook the Lahore bus yatra in February of 1999. But even as the Prime Minister was travelling to Lahore, then Pervez Musharraf, as army chiefs, his men were climbing the heights of Kargil and invading India. Now, the Kargil war followed that summer. Subsequently, Prime Minister Vajpayee invited Pervez Musharraf, also who had by then become president in July 2001, to Agra for a summit. There was no resolution. We all know that story. But Prime Minister Vajpayee never gave up on Kashmir. And in 2003, he goes to the Kashmir Valley, to Srinagar, and he talks about Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat, Jamhuriyat. And he says that under the ambit of these three words, the people of India can talk to the people of Kashmir. That kindness, that understanding of the pain of the people of Kashmir was picked up by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh Dr. Manmohan Singh from the Congress Party, Atal Behari Vajpayee from the BJP, but it never mattered. There was that thread of compassion that stitched both these prime ministers together. And so Dr. Manmohan Singh picks up the baton from Prime Minister Vajpayee and attempts also again to frame a peace process on the one hand with the people of Kashmir and on the other hand with the people of Pakistan. It was a hugely ambitious project that the Indian state unfolded or unveiled from 1998 when PM Vajpayee takes power to 2014 when Manmohan Singh loses power and Prime Minister Modi is elected the Prime Minister of India. These 16 years are really in many, many ways the story of Kashmir. But why am I talking about this today? One, of course, I said to you that it's the affidavit of Yasin Malik and how every Prime Minister and his men and women talked to him, both from the left as well as from the right, across the ideological spectrum. The second is that this month in September 2025 marks a full year since elections were held in Kashmir last year. I went and reported that election along with my colleagues, like I said, Arjun Sharma in Jammu and Adil Akhzar in Srinagar. It's been a whole year. A government has been elected to the Union Territory led by Omar Abdullah. A lot of things have happened. Mr. Abdullah has tried to bring some sort of peace to the valley. There have been many, many changes over the last year as well as since August of 2019 when Article 370 was revoked. And one of the great achievements since the revocation of Article 370 has been of an incredible stabilization, at least on the security front in the valley. You don't see, you don't see bomb attacks. You don't see, you don't see a lot of disaffection, if you like. That political disaffection has been brought under control in many ways. And one of the sterling episodes of that has been the successful election that took place last year. But what after that? We know that the real power in Jammu and Kashmir still lies with the Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha. That Omar Abdullah is the chief minister. He may be the chief minister, no doubt, and he does wield power and he speaks to his people again and again. But the real power in that Union Territory, and I was going to say state, but of course it's not a state, because Delhi, the center, refuses to give statehood to the people of Kashmir. So in a sense, that dichotomy of power that is at the heart of the issue in Kashmir, that problem has not been resolved. But I will also argue, and which is what I've done in my column, The Great Game, is that the center, the BJP, does not want to give statehood to the people of Kashmir, to Kashmir. And the reason it doesn't want to do that, and which is why the strap in the headline, ask not what the country can do for Kashmir, but what can Kashmir do for the country. And the reason I say this is because there's a lot of talk about how Kashmir can be leveraged to bring about or to enhance the BJP's influence in the rest of the country. For example, there's an election coming up in Bihar. Now, can the stabilization, the security stabilization or the security project in Kashmir help the BJP in some way win Bihar? We don't know if that's going to happen or not. But yes, I will say, and I will give it to the center, that there is much more peace on the security front. And that brings me, dear viewer, back to the past, and which I'm going to try and attempt to connect with the present. So, like I said in the past, both Yasin Malik and other separatists like him, the moderate separatist Kashmiri leader, Mirwais Omar Farooq of the Hurriyat, and then you had the more extremist leaders of the Hizbul Mujahideen. So over these 16 years between Prime Minister Vajpayee and Dr. Manmohan Singh, the attempt was made of the following, which is, on the one hand, Delhi would talk to Kashmir, and simultaneously these Kashmiri separatist leaders would speak to their mentors in Pakistan, in the ISI, in the Kashmiri groups there. And you find in the Yasin Malik affidavit how he traveled along and separately with other Kashmiri leaders. So he both went independently and went with others over ground across the line of control between Srinagar, Muzaffarabad, and then consequently towards Rawalpindi and Islamabad. So this very ambitious triangular conversation between Delhi and Srinagar on the one hand, between Srinagar and Rawalpindi / Islamabad at the other, and then the third leg in that three-legged stool was between Delhi and Islamabad, between India and Pakistan. Now, we also know that Dr. Manmohan Singh's back channel, so these many back channels that were working at the time. Yet another back channel that Dr. Manmohan Singh had unveiled was his special envoy, Satinder Lamba, now regretfully no more. He passed away some years ago. Satinder Lamba was also undertaking a separate back channel with his counterparts, the National Security Advisor of Pakistan, Tariq Aziz, and with several other people. Now, this attempt at bringing peace to the Kashmir Valley and also to the resolution of the India-Pakistan story that we know, that trauma has been going on since 1947. And then you have Prime Minister Modi coming to power. We also remember how when he was first installed in May of 2014, how Prime Minister Modi attempted very, very hard to pick up that baton that Dr. Manmohan Singh had passed on to him, and all the SAARC leaders, all the leaders of South Asia, including then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, who came to Delhi to participate in Prime Minister Modi's swearing in. Again, in a year later, in December 2015, Prime Minister Modi did the unthinkable by traveling to Pakistan and to participate in Nawaz Sharif's granddaughter's wedding. It was just an incredible moment in South Asian or in the subcontinent's relationships, and especially between these two arch rivals, India and Pakistan. But look at where we are in the last 10 years, dear viewer. And the story is one of deep regret and also of a great deal of anger, and how the Pakistani state again and again and again continues to use the instrument of violence to leverage its influence in trying to change the story of Kashmir, not just the story, but to undermine what's going on in Kashmir. And we see this in Pahalgam just a few months ago when 26 innocent people were massacred. That gave way to Operation Sindoor. But if you again try and connect the past, dear viewer, then you know that Operation Sindoor, in a sense, was like an avenging memory of what happened in 2008 when the Mumbai attacks happened, in which more than 160 people were killed, Indian as well as some foreign nationals. Then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, there was a lot of conversation in the Indian establishment. What do you do with Pakistan? Some talk that you should have retaliated against Pakistan, carried out a military strike or two. That suggestion was shot down, and the anger of the Indian establishment manifested in more diplomatic kind of moves. All communication was shut down between the two countries. Prime Minister Modi has taken a completely different tack, which is to be much, much tougher, and that is what Operation Sindoor has brought to us. And that is what Operation Sindoor has done, which is that Prime Minister Modi's view of the India-Pakistan relationship is that India is not a weak state. It's not a soft state. It has to stand up to the terrorism that has been unleashed by the Pakistani military establishment again and again and again. And India will not take that lying down. So all these different views and beliefs of the various prime ministers of India, I believe, have been encapsulated in some way, or at least Yasin Malik has tried to do that in his affidavit. He doesn't bring in the latter half of Prime Minister Modi's tenure. And then we have, and this is where I'm going to end my column, dear viewer, we have the former Special Director of the Intelligence Bureau, as well as the former Chief of India's External Intelligence Agency, the RNAW, Mr. Dullat, who in his last book in April, called The Chief Minister and the Spy, talked about how the Indian state has tried to wage peace in Jammu and Kashmir. And he ends, that book created a lot of controversy because of some of the comments that it had on former Chief Minister Farooq Abdullah, but I will not take you there. And before I go, I'd like to pay a personal tribute to a very dear friend and a very dear colleague, Sankarshan Thakur. He was the editor of the Telegraph newspaper, but his writing on Kashmir, the subject of my column today, was perhaps some of the best writing that you have ever read in Indian journalism. He went to the heart of the matter and he articulated the hopes and dreams and concerns of generations of Kashmiris. If you haven't read him already, I would urge you to do that. I send my deepest condolences to his family. Thank you so much for watching this video, dear viewer. I would also urge you to follow the Tribune on all our social media handles, read us, hear us, and tell me what you think of this video. Thank you again.